So, 2020 is here. There's a lot of fun stuff I'm looking forward to, but while you're waiting, you might want to check out some of the great stuff from 2019. But wowie gee, there sure is a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is crap. So how do you know what's worth watching? Well, that's why you've come to me, so I can give you great words of wisdom for 2019 goodness. Let's dive into my top 10 shows from 2019. A lot of people were disappointed by the finale of Game of Thrones, and I can't really blame them. I wish it was a couple episodes longer to better spend time developing the characters and the twists and turns to the plot, but I really did have fun, and I enjoyed the final season to this decade-long epic. Maybe the fact that I didn't start watching the show 10 years ago helped me to not hate it as much as others. I actually only watched it for the first time, 1 month before season 10 aired, so I had a lot less time investment into the story, and that probably led to a lot less disappointment. I'm putting it at number 10 because it was a monumentous end to a gigantic cultural event, but it was a little disappointing compared to most of the other seasons. It was an interesting finale for sure, and there were moments that I really did enjoy, but it was just a little rushed in the end. I still like seeing it come to a close regardless.
What do dragons eat, anyway?
Whatever they want.
What's happening?
Another one that I'm not all that nostalgic for, I love Jim Henson, and Labyrinth is my favorite movie of all time, but its weird little cousin, The Dark Crystal, never crossed my path until early 2019. I watched the movie in preparation for the show, and I can say that the show is a lot better than the movie. If you like the movie, then you'll definitely love the show. They've gone into a complete deep dive into the lore of the world, and it's interesting and entertaining for both adults and children. But you also don't need to watch the movie. You can dive right into the show and you'll be totally fine. The movie's technically a sequel to the show, so you'll be okay. And even though the show could be aimed for younger audiences, they never once shy away from the slightly darker elements of the story. They don't hide death or danger or anything that most of children's TV tries to hide from the kids. The story is compelling, and all the characters are amazing. Our main crew of heroes isn't just a knight, a mage, a princess, and comic relief. They evolve, they change, they're amazingly written, and you can actually watch the evolution of their friendships. Not to mention the villains. Ooh boy. In the movie, they're all lame, one-note monsters, but we spend just as much time developing our villains as we do our heroes. You get to really understand why they're doing the villainous things they're doing, and learn to love them and to hate them for all the best reasons. Also, this cast gives 110%. Look who they have to voice these characters. Taron Egerton, Jason Isaacs, Simon Pegg, Benedict Wong, Awkwafina, Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, and Mark Hamill? I know the puppetry could be a little off-putting to people, but after a little bit it became easy for me to become fully immersed into the visuals. So much so that I could highly recommend the documentary that accompanies the show, explaining the creative process of the world building and the puppetry. It's really cool. If you want a great fantasy story that takes you back to your childhood wonder, then this show is a must. A super dark comedy based off of a book from 1961. Catch-22 is an off-the-wall look at the pilots of the bomber planes from World War II. I need to be very upfront, this is a very dark, gruesome show, but that's part of the joke. This is the darkest dark comedy I've ever watched, and it's absolutely hilarious. The gist of the show is, our main character, nicknamed Yo-Yo, is super afraid of dying in the war, and is constantly paranoid about meeting his fate. And every episode, one of his friends is making fun of him for being afraid, and then they die. In more and more crazy and grotesque ways. It's a weird little miniseries, only lasting 6 episodes, but the whole thing will really stick with you. Weeks after I finished, I kept thinking about that ending. It's really smart and, like I said, very funny. If you like dark humor, this is right up your alley.
That's some catch, that catch-22.
It's the best there is.
comedy in the same style as The Office or Parks and Rec, What We Do in the Shadows has a ton of potential to be a mega hit. It originally was a movie from New Zealand in 2014, but this new show brings whole new life to the concept. It's about a little crew of vampires trying to, be normal in modern society. They have to go to the grocery store and they talk to the city council and stuff. It's really funny, and it's a refreshing way to approach the vampire jokes genre, which I'm a little sad that that's a genre. Hot off the heels of shit like Twilight, we got tons of parody-styled comedies to make fun of it. But What We Do in the Shadows is its own style of humor, and bases a lot of its jokes around real vampire lore mixed with our common era. There's this one character who's an energy vampire. He doesn't drink blood, he drains your energy by being boring. And I have definitely met many, 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 many energy vampires in my life. Teachers. It's hard to recommend a comedy other than just saying, it's funny, trust me, but really watch the first couple episodes to see if the comedy lands with you. I highly recommend it. Once it was over, I immediately wanted more.
Extend arm and dust. Careful of the spider house. You wouldn't like it if a spider came and dusted your house, would you, Guillermo?
I came to the show as, not the hugest Wu-Tang Clan fan or anything, so I can say, whether you're a fan of them or not, this is a fascinating story. It's based off of the real events of the rise of the Wu-Tang Clan boys trying to make music and also survive being in the middle of gang wars and drug deals. It's a crazy, entertaining story with a lot of intriguing characters and some amazing music, like that theme song. 10 out of 10. My only gripe for the show is that they throw a lot of characters at us right away, and they all have, multiple names, their actual name, and then their gangster musician names, and some of them change their names halfway through, so it could be a little hard to follow at first. But beyond that, it's a fun look at a piece of more recent history, and it's told in a way that never gets boring. Also, the cinematography and directing and editing and just the style of the show is mind-blowing. I could recommend it on style alone. There's also some really good morals and lessons being taught, which is hard to find in more adult shows. So I'm amazed that not only did they tackle it, but they executed it in a really smart way. Seriously, it's a great story, and it's amazing to see the complicated weavings of trying to break into an unforgiving and manipulative industry, especially when coming from nothing. A rag to riches story, but it's filled with fool's gold.
Anybody grab the sash? Yo, the money? Nothing? Fuck! Music.
Airing just at the end of the year, The Witcher was a fun little surprise to pop up on Netflix. Now, I have never played the games or read the books or anything, so I can say that even as a complete Witcher noob, I can still say it's a fun, compelling story. The characters are engaging, the plot is simple yet complex, the world is easy to get sucked into. The only issue is it's a little confusing, especially since, the stories aren't told in chronological order, and they never tell you that. You just have to figure it out on your own. But once you solve that, the actual show itself is fun and makes me want to play the games because of how much I was just enjoying the world and the story. It's a web of stories between three characters: Geralt, the Witcher, Ciri, the princess, and Yennefer, the worst character. Their lives and destinies are intertwined, but how all their paths cross doesn't always work out like a fairy tale. Witchers fight monsters, and Geralt runs into a bunch of unique characters along the way, trying to find Ciri. Her home was attacked, and she's on the run, trying to evade death and find Geralt as per her grandmother's final request. And Yennefer suffers her whole life before discovering she has the potential to tap into magic and limitless power. I've actually been contemplating doing a full review of the show, so if that's a thing you want to see, let me know and I can do something about that. I hear that Netflix wants to be their own show to compete with what Game of Thrones was, and it's not. But it is a fun high fantasy world. But it's lacking that hardcore political element Game of Thrones has, but The Witcher takes what it does have and goes all out with it. I could see this going for a lot more seasons, and I would love to explore the monsters and characters more and more. It's an almost perfect example of world building and character development. Give it a shot and toss a coin to your Witcher.
Where's your newfound respect?
Respect doesn't make history.
Disney Plus is pretty new to the streaming world, and aside from the nostalgia trip that is 99% of its selection, The Mandalorian is probably the other biggest thing you've heard coming from the service, and it deserves to be talked about. In my opinion, it's the smartest Star Wars story to be told in a while, though anything is better than Episode 8, am I right? Imagine the world of Star Wars mixed with a Western. Perfection. So, Mando here, not Boba Fett. I'm sure lots of people saw the helmet and immediately thought it was Boba Fett. It's not. It's a different Mandalorian. Mando is a bounty hunter, and he's too good and bored, so he gets offered a super secret, mega dangerous mission. He agrees, and what he finds changes his life. I won't spoil it, even though I'm sure most of you already know what it is, but just in case you haven't been spoiled yet, I'll just say that what he finds is the best thing ever. The series really does feel like a classic Western. Mando rolls in, meets people, solves their problems, and flies off into the sunset. If you like space fantasy and crazy space fights and monsters, you'll love this regardless of your opinions of the Star Wars franchise. Honestly, you don't really need to understand most of the Star Wars lore to be able to enjoy the story. It's a beautiful show and has a great premise. Really, you should check it out. I mean, everyone's been talking about it for a reason. Also, if you're mega disappointed with the movies, like me, then this will give you hope for the franchise again.
The bounty is mine.
Unless I'm mistaken, you are as of yet empty-handed.
This is true.
I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't heard anything about this show, but believe me, it's one of the most beautiful shows I have ever seen. The cinematography is gorgeous, and the story itself is near perfection. Now, the best thing I can compare this to is The Walking Dead, but you'll notice The Walking Dead is nowhere near this list because it's been getting pretty bad as of late. Like, yeesh. But Kingdom has taken everything that used to be good about The Walking Dead and made it 1,000 times better. A zombie outbreak occurs, but it's in the 1500s Korea, and that's it. And it's amazing. The simple differences of the change in location and era has given this concept a brand new breath of life and opportunities never explored in great detail, at least nothing recent. Since it's so far in the past, they can't just gun down the zombies all the time. The cast has one gun, and only one person who can actually use the gun efficiently. On top of that, the whole country treats it more like a plague to be quarantined than an actual apocalyptic epidemic. We see the royal figures, and they're very indifferent towards the zombies. They worry more about their politics than the living dead. Also, with their culture, you don't burn bodies. It's considered disrespectful. So the old traditional citizens have issues with trying to kill the zombies if it involves burning them. It's really very different from any other current zombie story. No joke, I still think about that broken cart scene. It was phenomenal. I'm sure some of you might be put off by the fact that it's entirely in a different language, but I think it's worth it. And all y'all subs before dubs people will be happy about that. But seriously, it's fun, creative, smart, thrilling, and way better take on the zombie genre than anything we've gotten in a long time. So I'm sure a lot of you will see Seth MacFarlane's face and brush the show off, especially how Fox's commercials for it make it seem like a stupid space comedy, but that's not even close to being the case. The Orville is Seth MacFarlane's take on a series of the same vein as Star Trek, and in many ways it feels like the actual spiritual successor to Star Trek, specifically Next Generation. And it's not a comedy. Yeah, they say jokes every now and then, but I could not classify it as a comedy. It is a space drama, hands down, and a really, really good one. Seth MacFarlane is actually a very smart writer and director, and he is giving the show all of his love. The characters are all interesting and varied. Each character gets several episodes dedicated to exploring and developing them. Now, Season 1 was good, but Season 2 really shines and goes even further with its characters and concepts. The Orville tackles really complex topics, like gender identity, cultural differences, artificial intelligence, and its limits. Orville goes into these topics but never tries to offer a cute little answer for everything. The crew doesn't just fly in, save the day. Oftentimes, episodes will end on a bittersweet note, and the original problem never really gets solved. It gets understood better, and maybe develops more, but they don't try to answer these complex ideas in a simplified manner. The Orville is the smartest show I've seen in a long time. And as a fan of Star Trek, it's a return to that way of storytelling that I didn't even realize I've been missing. You deserve it to yourself to watch this show. Season 2 was incredible, and I can't wait to see how Season 3 develops the world and the characters even further.
Captain, do you suppose Dolly Parton would be proud of us?
Oh, yeah.
Now, before we get to number 1, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. I really do love Disenchantment, but Season 2 wasn't nearly as much fun as its first season. The series is fun, but it's not nearly as funny as the other comedies I have on my list, and not as explorative with its fantasy elements either. I still recommend it, but I wouldn't blame you if it wasn't really your thing. It's gonna save you from this gravity. It would be blasphemous for me not to mention Ruby, and I do like how the Volume 7 is going so far, but at the end of 2019, we're only a little more than halfway through the volume. I couldn't really recommend it yet, since I don't know if the ending will be good or not, but I'm enjoying the much stronger character dialogue and development seen so far. It's definitely a fun take on the superhero genre, but there was a couple of flops when it came to character development and story progression that just made this one from making my list. I'm honestly expecting the second season to be much better. Similar to Disenchantment, I just like the first season better. It's hilarious and a ton of fun, but Season 1 was much stronger, with the story and played around with the time travel element more than Season 2 did. Honestly, this could have very easily been my number 1 pick, but I find the show very hard to recommend to people. It's very violent, and it's based off of true events of how the FBI developed its criminal psychology and profiling by studying real serial killers. So it's kind of really intense, and if that sounds interesting to you, definitely watch it. Season 2 focuses on the missing children of Atlanta. Remember, everything they talk about and all the characters portrayed are real events and real killers and criminals. It's a heavy show and a heavy topic. I think it's masterfully made, but I'm well aware it's not for everyone. So with that, let's check out number 1.
My name is...
Bill Hader is best known for his side-splitting humor, but this dark comedy about a hitman trying to make a new career as an actor is pretty different from his normal stuff, but it's just as funny. Bill Hader plays the titular character, Barry, who gets into antics and trying to improve his acting, joining an improv group, getting mixed with the Russian mafia, and despite his wishes, continuing to get hired for his amazing hitman prowess. This show proves how masterful of an actor Bill Hader is, and also highlights his near-perfect writing skills too. Barry is beautifully complex. It's easy to fall in love with. Barry never gets painted as a black and white character. For example, during an improv class, the topic of murdering another human gets brought up. It was like Macbeth or Shakespeare, you know, plays. Everyone in the class firmly states that murder is evil and awful and unforgivable. Frustrated, Barry brings up the fact that he's murdered people. Does that make him evil? If you haven't seen the show, that revelation might seem like Barry admitting to being a hitman, but it's not, because Barry is a veteran. The show tackles war and PTSD in a gritty, honest way, yet amazingly keeps that funny twist to the show. I meant what I said, it's a dark comedy, and the way it juggles the dark tones to the lighthearted jokes is unbelievably executed perfectly. 2019 gave us the mind-blowing second season for the show. I was concerned it wouldn't live up to Season 1. The first season seemed so perfectly executed and wrapped up nicely, but I was pleased to find that Season 2 took everything that made Season 1 fun and thrilling and cranked it up to 11. It's not just Bill Hader who makes the show great, it's the entire cast landing their comedic roles and serious dialogue. It's the writers and directors capturing the tone and characters perfectly without ever making the show awkward or uncomfortable. It's the entire production making the show memorable, and it'll stick with you long after you've reached the final episode. I still, almost daily, think about the episode Ronnie Lily. It was arguably the funniest episode ever written, in history. I cannot recommend Barry enough to you. It's smart, funny, thrilling, dramatic, everything is so well done, and I can't wait for Season 3.
What are you?
So that was a look at 2019. Seriously, check out any of these shows, you won't regret it. I hope I showed you something you haven't heard of yet, and I hope you saw something that piqued your interest. Of course, if you want to share the love, in the comments I want to hear all about your top 10 shows of 2019, or any of your thoughts and opinions on some of the shows I mentioned on my list. If you like my content, why not consider supporting me on Patreon? Any and all contributions are greatly appreciated and really go a long way, and it would make you an awesome person. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.